Hey guys, Hammeh here, and a cool little teaser for you for what might, or just might, be Overwatch's next event, if not something very cool coming very, very soon. Over on the Blizzard ANZ Twitter and Facebook page, Australia and New Zealand, a short teaser video went live not long ago with lots of fascinating little tidbits pointing to some kind of reveal on April the 12th. In this very short video, I'll analyse every piece and detail of this vid that we can see, then we'll have a little speculate as to what it could be teasing. Now this video has since been removed, so we clearly weren't meant to see it just yet. Hang on in, let's have a look. So, we are seeing something from the Overwatch mission archives. Now, we've seen something like this before in terms of material from Overwatch's archive. It was Ana's biotic rifle before Ana was revealed. Here it's talking about the King's Row Uprising entered into the record 7 years ago. Now, the significance of that date is that Overwatch fell roughly 6 or so years ago in the timeline when Jack Morrison was buried. We have that from a blog called Fading Glory on the Trail of Jack Morrison on the Overwatch website. So if this was in the record 7 years ago, it could be just before Overwatch actually fell, or the Swiss HQ blew up. It's declassified April 12th, so whatever's happening, we don't have long to wait, just over a week or so. However, there's some interesting bits in the background here. Let's go through them one by one, and then finally, let's have a speculate as to what could be coming. What interests me a bit more when we move down is mandatory robot registration. Now, before you get too excited about that particular QR code, it doesn't apparently go anywhere right now. There are some people more clever than me on Reddit who are trying, and do go have a look at the thread there, linked in the description below. Now, I find mandatory robot registration quite a sinister concept. Having to register yourself as a robot or Omnic, your existence, to put yourself in a register, does have slight echoes of kind of registering as part of, say, racial or social characteristics beyond a mere kind of census or survey way. It kind of has echoes of apartheid to me. Now, very long story short, apartheid was a system of institutionalized segregation and discrimination in the 1940s or late 1940s and the late 1980s, early 90s. In actual fact, in South Africa in the 1950s, there was a Population Registration Act, meaning people had to register or be assessed on their race. Now, this law worked in tandem with other laws, often to discriminate. For example, under the Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act of 1949, it was illegal for a white person to marry a person of another race, for example. So if the UK or England or whatever this place is in an Overwatch future has got to this kind of stage of registering Omnics, it does have some quite dark overtones for me as to what the tension between Omnics and humans might be like in King's Row in an Overwatch future, as well as hinting perhaps as to the tough or horrible living conditions or indeed discrimination that Omnics might face. Now, in the bottom left, we can see what looks to be the King's Road Underground Station, with a map or wall screen in the background. We've seen a few of those in Overwatch bases, in the actual church, attacking spawning King's Row and other places, so it certainly looks as though something's happening there if it's not just a news screen. In the top right corner, and this is one of the most interesting things here, we see what could be one of two things. What it says in the background is Turing Green, I think, and then SW0. It seems to be a tall, rising development, either an office building or perhaps living accommodation, and some copy underneath. Now, it looks as though it says building an Omnic future. That's a guess. We can't see the middle of the word, but it certainly starts with O. So what could it be? Is it a poster for a company? Remember, of course, we have the Axiom poster in Numbani that very much looks like a poster advertising a company with buildings, shiny ships on and similar. Or perhaps it's an advert for a housing development, and there's quite a bit of that in London right now. Turing is a particularly significant name. During the Second World War, Alan Turing, of course, worked for the government in the UK, and he was working at Bletchley Park. It was Britain's code-breaking centre, and he led a section responsible for analysing German naval ciphers and codes. He actually broke the Enigma machine, and this actually helped the British and the Allies win the Battle of the Atlantic, and therefore helped win the war. So his contribution to the war effort and the eventual perhaps success, certainly in terms of fighting shipping engagements, couldn't be underestimated. The Turing test also is quite famous in the world of artificial intelligence. Turing devised or suggested a way of trying to assess a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behaviour equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. So certainly echoes and comparisons to be made to Omnics there. So this is a very important concept that's debated often in the philosophy of artificial intelligence, kind of apt that building an Omnic future or not, might be built on a site named after Turing. Or perhaps very ironic, given that Turing speculated as to how machines could have the ability to show behaviour like humans. Omnics, well, in Overwatch's future have kind of perhaps proved this, and then they've effectively been ghettoised or discriminated against as a result after the Omnic crisis. Finally, the SW0 piece is probably a postcode reference here in the UK. SW is a postcode in London. It's quite a mixture of areas in the southwest. It does include places like Buckingham Palace, Whitehall, the Houses of Parliament, Brixton and others. There's also quite a lot of wealth in there, places like Chelsea and Kensington you may have heard of, depending on your taste for reality TV. Poor you if so. So this Turing Green development with an SW0 suffix coming after it as such could be quite a swanky affair if it's a housing development, depending on its location. And finally, the SW0 thing is quite common here in the UK on some kind of developments in London, telling you where they're located for new housing, new flats and similar. Also, if there was quite a swanky housing development, it would be an ideal place perhaps if it's named after Turing to protest against Omnic mistreatment. What would Alan Turing think of the treatment of Omnics who have kind of shown artificial intelligence perhaps to be almost equivalent to humans? Now in the bottom right here we have what is very obviously a model of Tracer. It's hard to get the details, it might be her normal skin, although colours on the legs look a little bit different obviously. This is all blued out in the background and I can't quite tell if she has something different over her eyes rather than her usual goggles. Now an Overwatch mission in King's Row, Tracer being involved is no massive surprise, but it'll be interesting to see how she's involved and whether perhaps, as I come to our next section, whether this is pointing to maybe a more story-based release or perhaps a straight-up event. Last but not least, what could this all be pointing to? So it could be really one of two things. Now, a lot of people have mentioned in the past that they'd love to see lore events or story events in Overwatch, and indeed, since the cancellation of First Strike, Overwatch's graphic novel that was coming, 100 pages of it, cancelled late in 2016, Michael Chu of the dev team mentioned that the Overwatch team were looking for other ways to try and bring different elements of the story to us. This looks quite story-centric, so we've already seen this King's Row Uprising potentially somewhere before. We do know from the lore of King's Row that Omnics were forced into an underground-style, ghetto-like existence, and in previous trailers we've seen this very short clip of what looks like a full-on uprising or fight between Omnics, humans, and the authorities. Now, as this date is before Overwatch may have shut down, entered into the record 7 years ago, what happened here? Who from Overwatch was involved? If Tracer was a part of it, then whose side were Overwatch on? This could be a good opportunity to tell a story. Is it a comic? Is it an animated short? Some kind of little animated release, perhaps in the vein of the Origin trailers that we see? I'd love any of those, and any lore or story that would get released off the back of this would be really interesting to have a look at. The Overwatch Mission Archives could be perhaps a new series, where we occasionally get little lore releases talking about different things that happened in Overwatch's history, and therefore telling the story of the world and the Omnic Crisis and similar through those. That would be a really good vehicle for telling stories, so I'd love to see that, even if this is not the case. Now, what could be more likely? Well, a lot of people think that this could be teaser for just a straight up event. It's been a couple of months since we've seen the Lunar New Year event. A McCree skin was mentioned by Michael Chu on the official forums as being due in spring. Jeff Kaplan on the official boards recently mentioned that this is going to be a good year for skins. Put all of that together, well, we could have a new event. Omnic themed skins, perhaps Overwatch on mission themed skins. Who could get them? Well, McCree possibly. Genji and Hanzo haven't had something for a while. Be good to see them getting skins. And of course, as well as skins, we get some kind of event. If we didn't see a bunch of heroes redone as Omnics, I'd love to see a King's Row PvE event of some kind. Now remember that King's Row recently on the PTR has just had a map refresh of its textures too. Maybe that's ahead of some kind of event that we'll be playing there. Now story-wise, we know that at some point the Omnics were forced into the underground in King's Row. Could this King's Row Uprising be the uprising after which this happened? Maybe the Omnics were protesting it having to be registered, fights break out as we've seen in trailers, they then have to go underground. So what could we be doing in a PvE event? Perhaps protecting the Omnics from the confrontation? Or trying to help stop the uprising, protecting or guarding civilians? Maybe dealing with a third party in play somehow, like Talon or otherwise. It'd be very cool either way, and we don't have long to wait. So what do you think this is going to be teasing? Are there any heroes you'd love to see with Omnic skins? Would you like to see a lore-focused event? Or would you like to see the more traditional event with PvE mode, perhaps some kind of brawl and skins, or perhaps a mixture of the two? I'd personally love it absolutely either way, so I really can't wait to see what's happening, and only about 10 or so days to wait. So look forward to it. If you like this video, do throw a like or sub, comment in the comments below with what you thought, and do take a look at all of my longer Overwatch lore content, hero lore, interactions, voice lines, skin lore, map lore, world lore, comic analysis and animated shorts, so much more besides. They're in the playlists here. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.